Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are going to be discussing the Boston Red Sox finally being able to actually pull through in a series. They win 2 out of 3 against the Mariners for their first series win since the All-Star break. It came down to Game 3 and came down to an extra innings performance from Rafael Devers to hit the walk-off in the 10th to do so, but it was a very big win at this point for the Red Sox, who I think have been hurting themselves more than anything else during this stretch where they have been really struggling coming out of the gates for the second half of the season, where they have been really struggling defensively in terms of racking up some errors, which continued to be the case in Game 2, where James Paxton makes his first start with the Red Sox this season, one of their trade deadline acquisitions, and behind him, the defense just kind of fully failed him. 6 runs were scored while he was in the game pitching, but only 3 of them earned, and it was because of the fact that, we have seen this Red Sox team for a while struggle defensively. You can say the same for that Rockies series as well, when the game really got out of hand for them in that Game 3 for Nick Pivetta. Pivetta just got shelled, so definitely don't want to fully put it on the defense there, but didn't do him any favors. And then against the Yankees, that Juan Soto double off of the monster should have been caught by Tyler O'Neill, but he's not able to catch it, and as a result, Yankees score a couple extra runs and close the Red Sox out in that series as well. So it has been overall a very frustrating start for the Red Sox, and it's not just the defense, like I mentioned. The offense as well, as much as they've been, pretty prominent for the most part, I'd want to give them credit because they have been able to put up runs, and that the pitching hasn't necessarily been able to back them up quite as much. But at the same time, the Red Sox are hitting .239 with runners in scoring position coming out of the break. So that is definitely an issue. Now, you look at, being able to take down the Mariners and looking at this series specifically, it's a big one, just for the confidence sake of the clubhouse to be able to get back on the right track, and B, considering the fact that the Mariners could very likely be one of those teams that they could be fighting for the final wild card spot in the American League. As things currently stand, the Mariners and the Astros are just about neck and neck for the division. The Astros with the tiebreaker, though. So as things stand, the Mariners are right behind the Red Sox for that last wild card spot. Now, both of them on the outside looking in, as the Twins and the Royals are locked up ahead of them. But it's always nice to, of course, take a series against a team that could end up hurting you when September rolls around. So just the flat-out fact of beating the Mariners is of significance, and I thought that the biggest surprise for Boston in this series was just considering how well they were able to hit. And like I mentioned, the runners in scoring position numbers have been bad, and it came with couple bad days as well. Game 1, they were really able to benefit off of that crazy sequence there in what I believe was the 5th inning. I could double check that one, but going up against this series as a whole, going up against 3 of the best pitchers, one of the best rotations in the league, in Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, and George Kirby. But Game 1, when the Red Sox were able to blow it open, it was after that very controversial, it should have been a strike 3 call against Wilyer Abreu with 2 outs, but ultimately a missed strike call there. Abreu ends up working, I think it was a 13-pitch at-bat, ends up driving in a run there, and then the Red Sox double parade just came flying in. This was in the 3rd inning, actually, so, it was in the... I gotta double check here. Sorry, doing this on the fly. Probably not the best idea for myself, but in that 3rd inning is really when they opened that game up, and that definitely have to feel for Gilbert a little bit there, but at that point you allow, I think it was 4 consecutive doubles. That's a tough beat, but that game they went 7 of 9 with runners in scoring position. Outside of that, they were 4 for 15 in game 2, 2 of 9 in game 3, and it's been a pretty consistent struggle with them during this second half of the season stretch where they haven't actually been able to drive guys in. And they've been able to get on base. Even in game 3, that's when the offense sort of came back down to earth. We're only able to put up 3 runs in that game, and it took extras to even do so there. But they had 10 hits in that game, 7 of which came against Kirby, but they couldn't finish the job. Now, lucky for them, we got one of the best starts from Brian Bayo of the season for him, where he ends up pitching into the 7th inning, wasn't able to close it out there, but he got a really impressive performance out of him, which was a positive on that front. But it's interesting because it's not like the offense is totally dead. They are putting guys in position, but finishing the job has definitely been a concern up to this point for me in the second half of the season. Now, I mentioned Devers ends up hitting the walk-off in the 10th inning of Game 3. He has been unbelievable since the All-Star break, slashing .375, .426, and .646 with a .1072 OPS. He's currently on an 8-game hit streak, so is Masataka Yoshida, so you see a lot of these players, again, stepping up and feeling like they might be working themselves into a groove, but they're going to need to actually take advantage of opportunities. That's something that goes back to that Dodgers series, where literally the first game coming out of the All-Star break, they end up losing because they could only put up 1 run despite putting runners in scoring position 11 times and going 0 for 11 in those situations. Shots Below the Belt says both the Red Sox and Yankees have been quiet in the last couple of years. Is their rivalry still the best in baseball? I mean, I think that it probably, from a national fan standpoint, does still carry a lot of juice in terms of, well, not even national fans. I think that Yankees and Red Sox fans would agree that it's still, real hatred there. But I can also understand, from the outside looking in, it's kind of two teams that have been just hovering. I mean, the Yankees haven't actually won a World Series in forever, and the Red Sox have been, really good for stretches, and then they'll go from first place in the American League East to last, just like that. And they're not necessarily treating themselves like a big market franchise, so I feel like it's definitely cooled off. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still, at least, personally from the inside, I still cannot stand the Yankees, so little bias there on my end, but I think it's still real to some degree. But yeah, I mean, Rafael Devers, like I mentioned, he's been red hot for them. Masataka Yoshida been big. Ultimately, Duran kind of had his maybe the quietest series of the season up to this point, and against good pitching in Seattle, even though they were able to get their share of hits off of. But just like that on the other side, I mean, this is a Mariners lineup that has not been very successful as of the past couple months, and they were able to put up some big numbers against the Red Sox in this series. 7 runs in Game 1, 10 runs in Game 2. Like, it's not a good sign necessarily. And again, that sort of ties back into the defense that especially came into play during their Game 2 matchup during that Paxton start. But ultimately, the Red Sox, it feels like now they can sort of take a deep breath. They have the day off today, and when they come back tomorrow, and what's going to be a pretty competitive August for them, playing Texas twice, Kansas City, Houston twice, Baltimore, Arizona, Toronto, and Detroit at the end are a little bit softer, but none of those teams are necessarily fully rolling over, and they're going to definitely be tested. And a massive part, if the Red Sox are going to be able to turn this thing around a little bit and make a playoff push, it's going to, I think, in large part, come down to the bullpen, where up to this point, I've had very, very little faith in what the Red Sox bullpen is actually able to give you. Outside of Kenley Jansen, who always has his, share of drama in there as well. He gets the job done, of course, but outside of him, there aren't many guys that can get you to that ninth inning with a lead. And it hurts that Justin Slayton's been injured, Chris Martin has been injured, but that's why they go out and make the addition of Sims and Garcia. Sims, by the way, Lucas Sims, he ends up making his Red Sox debut yesterday and came up in a huge spot for them where he was able to get out of a first and third situation where at that point, that was during the Bayo running into the seventh inning. I didn't even necessarily love keeping him in there. I understand the player progression part of it, but I had pretty little confidence in him there. He ends up walking the 9-man and gets behind in Rojas, the control just sort of failing him there. And yeah, it was first and third with one out, and Lucas Sims is able to come in, immediately get Randy Arozarena to pop up, and ends up getting Justin Turner to ground out to get out of that inning. So I think that their new bullpen additions are going to be massive for them. Ideally, the guys returning from injury are going to be able to play a role because you don't have a lot of high leverage relievers at this point in the year. And, maybe Liam Hendricks can play into that if he ever is going to make a return this season. We're not really sure about that. But I think that ultimately, for the Red Sox, this would be the time to be able to sort of take a step back and, gear yourself up to go. Now, it doesn't help that Kenley Jansen is currently listed as day-to-day. He had some lower back tweak during his appearance yesterday, was still able to close it out. But, again, assuming that he's fully healthy, this is the time where the Red Sox really need to start to be ramping up because they built up all of this momentum ahead of the All-Star break and kind of lost it. Now, the front office was still willing to invest some prospect assets into making the team better now, even if it is just more so on the marginal side. But Red Sox are going to have a little bit of work cut out for them to, be able to put themselves in playoff contention. And I think that in the American League this year, it's anybody's ball game once you actually make it to the dance. But we will see. They kick off their series in Texas on Friday. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Be sure to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will be back same time as always tomorrow at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great.